Greetings, mortals! Brimthen here, and we're going to talk a little bit about Total War Warhammer 2, and particularly the Mortal Empire's factions. I've got my good buddy Nance here, who is a lot more experienced at the game than me, and is featured prominently on our co-op campaign that we played together, and he's the guy that taught me. Say what up!
What's going on, guys? Yeah, I've played quite a bit of Warhammer. If 1,300 hours says anything.
So first things first, we're going to get over here and start in Mortal Empires. I have all of the DLC. I have all the characters. We're just going to talk about what is the best character for each faction that is for basically newer players that want to kind of get into it. Starting out here with the High Elves, which I know Nance prefers a little bit more than me.
Yeah, because you're a dwarf man. Yeah, Tyrion is definitely the easiest pick out of all the factions. Any faction you can play, this is literally the easiest because High Elves are on their own island, and basically you can just archer spam if you want to, but I mean explore all the units if you want to as well. Yeah, and they have an easy economy, and that's pretty much the gist of it.
Yeah, they pretty well trade with everybody diplomatically.
Yep, pretty much.
I'm going to try to scroll through all of their abilities as well while we talk about them. Then we get into Lizardmen, which is definitely one of my preferreds, and the one I suggest for almost everybody that wants to start out with Lizardmen, Kroq-Gar. He's got a great starting location. He's got great starting units. The Steglodon is just awesome. His abilities with the upkeep of lower on Saurus. Saurus is a really strong infantry unit, and getting that 50% value to make more of them is just awesome in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. Kroq-Gar is definitely a great pick for Lizardmen starting off.
Mundy's also good. He plays more on the magic side though.
Yeah, and his starting position is not as easy as Kroq-Gar's as well. But still manageable.
Very much. The one I don't suggest people to play is Nakai the Wanderer. It's a Horde faction, and we pretty much don't suggest playing any of the Horde factions.
No. Put a big no on Horde factions until they fix them.
If you wouldn't mind explaining Horde faction just a little bit.
Okay. So basically, Horde factions, you don't have settlements. You don't have bases. Literally, your army is your base. If you lose that army, you're done. And they have poor income. It's just, it's overall just not really fun. I mean, some people might find it fun because you ain't got to worry about settlements. But, yeah, Horde is not the funnest thing to play, especially starting out.
And then we've got the Dark Elves, who are just edgy High Elves, and I definitely am going to give that to you as well.
Yeah, Malekith, okay. So I don't recommend this as a faction starting off, but if you are interested in the Dark Elves, so basically, how you play Dark Elves is, Malekith is the easiest pick. He can easily make up to 10k in his treasury within like 10 turns. Just by sacking settlements, stuff like that. The power of your income as Dark Elves is to get slaves, and you can acquire slaves by defeating enemies that are enemies in battle, constantly sacking settlements, and there's a system where the slaves get like spread out between your settlements. You want to focus it just on your capital. Put all your slaves in your capital for the maximum income that you possibly get. But again, I don't recommend them for new players because they are pretty hard to play. Because there's a lot you got to keep up with, public order and so forth. Because slaves make your public order go downhill really fast. But that's pretty much the gist of them. But they are Malekith is super powerful.
Yep, Malekith is definitely the one to pick on that. On the Skaven side of things, for the ones that don't require DLC, I suggest going with Lord Skrolt. Has great magic, has some of the best starting units between having a catapult and rat ogres, but also has just, higher chances of spreading plague, and is just a generally great upkeep, great starting location. I highly suggest Skrulk for somebody that's wanting to play Skaven just normally. However, if you want to go check out the DLC, I highly suggest Ikit Claw. I have a second video on Ikit Claw cheese, and I personally feel like it's a great way for a new player to start in the game, and at least everybody should try the Ikit Claw cheese at least one time. It lets you get to in-game units really early on, really teaches you the campaign map and all the different things that you can kind of tweak in the campaign map. Providence bonuses, all the ways of building buildings, and basically getting to that end game. And then it just trounces inside the second part of battleground mapping and units and stuff. So I suggest Skrulk for people that want to try Skaven out. But Skaven is not super new player friendly. There's a lot of mechanics in it, like food, and then the loyalty system that they have. It's not a great one for new players to play. However, Ikit Claw is a great one just to try out the end game.
This is true. Very, very true. And also, the perk about Skrulk, if you pick Skrulk, when you spread the plague, with them, they actually get a buff when they get the plague. All their units get a buff if they get the plague. Any other Skaven faction you play will actually take damage from the plague if it backfires in your face and goes onto your settlements, or your army catches the plague.
Yep.
So and that's a huge advantage.
So we get to our first all DLC faction, which is Vampire Coast and Tomb Kings, basically. Vampire Coast is definitely one that I don't know too much about, and I'll let kind of Nance take it away.
Okay, Count Noctilus is probably the easiest one, and again, the reason why is because he's actually got his own, like his main settlement is on an island, and then you could pretty much just sail off and pick which island you want to attack and stuff like that. Vampire Coast are not a faction that you want to keep getting or gaining settlements with. You want to put pirate coves in all like the big money settlements, which again, it's not totally new player friendly because you don't know where all the big money settlements are and stuff like that. But they do have powerful units, very micro intensive because they have a lot of gunpowder units. But yeah, Count Noctilus is probably the easiest one to run out of all of them because you ain't got no enemies to deal with because you're smack dab out in the middle of the ocean.
Yep. On Tomb Kings, which is one that I'm partial to for sure. Cetra is the most common pick. It's definitely the easier one for most new players to play. Tomb Kings is once again an all DLC faction. It's one that I do suggest new players to play because you don't have to worry about upkeep with Tomb Kings. So you can make as big of an army as you want to, and it's not going to set you back like other factions do. Because one of the biggest new player traps is building too much and not being able to pay for the armies that you built.
Yeah, I agree with that. And plus, I mean, you just get like 10 armies with, I mean, like you said, it's zero upkeep for the troops. You just swarm people with unlimited armies.
And I just gotta mention my own personal love of Archon the Black. He's in a terrible location. He's not very easy to use, but he has some of the best magic, and he's just hilariously fun to use. We should have probably also did that for your Queek earlier. If you want to talk about Queek real quick, I'll have him up on the screen.
Alright, so Queek is my most favorite character in Warhammer. Mainly because all the Skaven hate him because instead of leading from the back, he likes to lead from the front and get into the battle and start slaughtering everybody himself. And a fun fact, if anybody outkills Queek, he kills them afterwards. But his starting position, he is a super fun one, but his starting position is for new players.
Yep. So, moving on, probably what I would consider one of the easier factions to use, which is Empire. At least I know a lot of people like them. I personally don't, but it is what it is. I know
vanilla.
Carl... Yeah, very vanilla. Carl Franz, definitely one of the ones to pick for it. And I'll let Nance kind of talk a little more on it.
Yep. So Karl Franz is definitely, because he's the emperor of the empire, and he's trying to keep the empire together because they're kind of fighting each other and stuff. So, and when you first start off, you have to quell a rebellion that's pretty much taking over your entire province, but your capital. And then on top of that, a little bit north is a big city called Marienburg. It's probably one of the richest settlements to have. It will make you have lots of money for more armies. And on Empire, you cannot just constantly go to war with anybody that is Empire because you're trying to keep them from rebelling and stuff. And eventually, you could just confederate them because you get penalties if you take over.
Yep.
But at least for Karl Franz, you can at least get to fight someone instead of just sitting around for a few turns.
Speaking of sitting around for a few turns, we should probably talk about the dwarfs next.
Oh, yeah.
So, dwarves are one that a lot of people suggested back in the day as the one for new players to pick out. They are kind of half and half on that. What you want to do with dwarves is you want to lock down your first providence and then just sit. You want to just bulge out from your first providence until you're like ready. They're really good at locking down and holding their cities. They're very hard to take off of their area. Foregrim is definitely the one to go for here as a starting one. You get your catapults, you get some really good missile infantry, and you get some hammers. But it's mostly his ability to get higher ranks for their hammers and to have a low upkeep on longbeards. Longbeards, hammers, catapults, all the mortars and the crazy stuff dwarves can make. It's definitely a fun way to play, but I don't really suggest it for every new player unless you're just wanting to like get in there and play a very defensive game.
Yep. They're very defensive. So pretty much you wall up and you just hold in there because you got to wait for the green tide, which is the orcs, to show up. You got to beat them into submission, and then you can push out after you beat their best army.
And on that other spectrum, the green tide.
Yep, the green tide itself.
Grimgar is best. Grimgar is the greatest. There is no other orc out there. He is the biggest and the best.
This is true. He is the best. There is not anyone. The only one I can say that might be able to duel him is Tyrion. That's it. There's no other legendary lord in the game that would fight him straight up and come out victorious.
And he starts with some of the best orcs that you can get, which is black orcs. He starts with the Doomdiver catapults, which are great catapults. And some okay cavalry, which can pull up some crazy wins when stacked. Savage orcs, great way to go. Orcs are just a very aggressive, very strong faction, and they're just really good at just taking over large areas. Be careful as a new player not to push too far out, though. That is a very big player trap of pushing too far and overextending.
Yep. You don't want to overextend. It's a trap because it'll put you into more wars. You don't have enough armies to defend it all. So you want to slowly expand, build up your walls, build up your settlements to where they're strong enough to handle attacks on their own if need be, if you can't afford the army to protect them. Stuff like that. But also, orcs confederate really fast, so if you beat the leader of another orc tribe, you immediately have the option to confederate them. They get all their territories.
Good point. Moving on to vampire counts. I will let Nance kind of talk on this one because I don't know as much about them, even though I like them.
Okay, vampire counts. When you beat a legendary lord, which is the main lord for any other faction, and this includes other vampire factions, you get a blood kiss. Which can, when you get so many blood kisses, you can awaken different lords from different bloodlines, and they give you buffs. And one of my favorite ones is I think it's the Blood Lords, I think it's the Blood Lords. I could be saying that wrong. But on the tier 3, which takes a minute to get because it's a lot of blood kisses you have to get, you're pretty much, the bad thing about vampires, you have to spread your vampiric corruption. So you're going to be setting around your territory a lot, because if you walk out of your vampiric territory, you take attrition, which all your troops start taking damage while you're walking around. So you got to wait on your Vampire Corruption to go up to at least 50% before you can walk out further. But with the Bloodlord, if you go down their tree, awakening all their lords, you get immune to non-vampiric lands, so you don't take attrition.
Yep.
But they have no range. They're straight up melee and monstrous units, and a lot of magic. Literally, Manfred, when you put him on this flying Pegasus, or whatever you want to call it, it's a skeleton Pegasus. He can literally take an entire fort by himself with his magic.
And we suggest Manfred for newer players.
Yes.
Getting into Norska stuff, we don't suggest Norska for a new player. It's a really, really, really hard starting location, and they kind of struggle in the game. They've kind of been left aside for a while since Warhammer 1. But if you're going to go for him, go for Wulfric. He has an amazing aesthetic. I really, really want Wulfric to be good, you know what I mean?
He's good, it's just the supply line for them is very expensive, and you don't get a whole lot of income, so it's hard to defend all your territories and stuff like that. Like, you just don't need to play him if you're new. Like, you need to know more about the game before you decide to play him. So
bottom line at the end of the day.
Yeah, they're very melee heavy, monster heavy faction. Barely any range.
Yep. Moving on to Britonia. For the lady.
For the lady.
I don't know much about the rest of these factions, honestly, because I don't play Britonia, I don't play Wood Elves, and I've played a little bit about the Horde, so I can talk about them. So I'll kind of let you go for the Britonia and the Wood Elves here.
All right. So Leon Kerr, which is the king of Britonia, he is probably the best to play because he has a faction effect where everybody gets plus 10% campaign movement range. And what that is that's 10% more range on the map to move around, catch armies, get to one of your settlements faster if it's under attack, if you're kind of out of the way and your army's not there. But basically what Britonia is if you've watched Lord of the Rings, it's Rohan. They specialize in straight up cav, and their infantry is peasants. Just a bunch of angry farmers that put on a couple of pieces of armor and it's like, all right, we're ready to fight with our pitchforks. But yeah, Leon Kerr is probably the easiest to start out with because they can also take Marienburg, which I mentioned earlier for the Empire. The one thing you gotta watch out for, though, if you play Britonia, you have to take out the Orcs because you will have constant rebellions if you're able to take out the Orc next to your settlement.
Yep.
And Orcs are pretty hard to deal with, so you gotta be a little careful when you engage them.
And then moving on to one of Xanfer's favorites, which is Wood Elves.
Yes, indeed. Orion, or as I call him, Mel Gibson. If he looks like Mel Gibson. He's probably the easiest to play, or he's like the default, the standard, the first DLC of Wood Elves to come out. So I recommend just playing him. They're kind of just like High Elves. You can go archer spam and just mow everybody down with arrows. They have pretty decent infantry. They have pretty decent cav. They have monstrous tree units, which are very fun to run. I wouldn't recommend it for a new player, not unless you really, really are interested in the Wood Elves, because they don't have that many buildings that give them income, and so they don't get as many armies. But literally all you do is just hide in your forest and protect your forest.
Yep.
Don't let nobody come in your forest so you smash them. That's pretty much how you play Wood Elves.
And then last, but certainly is the least, Horde Factions.
Oh boy. Well, as a new player, absolutely never touch a Horde faction. Not unless you really want to try it because you're interested in the faction, but I would not recommend it as your first playthrough. Again, Horde factions, they don't have settlements. All they want to do is watch the world burn. And the way they got them set up is kind of annoying because, like, what's his name? Karasik the One Eye is probably the easiest beastman to play, but all you do is just burn stuff to the ground, and the AI tends to just come up behind you and keep taking it back over because you ain't got the income or the armies to keep them from doing it. So Horde Factions are just in a really sloppy place right now, so I wouldn't recommend anybody playing them at any time in their experience.
Nope. Definitely don't suggest it. And something that I had to learn the hard way is if you're wanting to play with your friend who's playing Ikaclaw and you go Karzak the One Eye, you're going to screw him over. Because he spreads corruption.
Very.
And he corrupts all of the area that he's in pretty much if you take too long of a time sacking Tabar over and over and over. And it will corrupt that land and cause attrition on Ikit and will just absolutely destroy Ikit.
If you want to be a troll, play Karzak One Eye when somebody plays Ikit.
Yeah, and I learned it the hard way. I'm so sorry, Foxtrot. I'm so sorry, man. I couldn't have known. And then you got the Chaos. Archon is the one to pick there, but again, Horde faction, just don't go for it. Like,
if you want to try Horde, though, Archeon's your pick. If you really want to try Horde, he's probably the one to make it the most fun.
Yep.
But still, don't recommend it.
and it's mostly because he's got that 5% ward save to add to everything, and then he gets 50% more income from razzing settlements, and just recruitment costs for the Chaos Warrior units, which is mainly what you're going for. And then units get 3% extra weapon and missile strength. Like, he does a good balanced spread across all of his army. But again, playing Horde is just, it's not the way to go, man.
No, it's not. If you want the good experience of the game, don't go for it.
And all of the Chaos stuff is getting a rework, I think, in Warhammer 3. We'll have to see what Warhammer 3 ends up doing. But that pretty much concludes this kind of overall faction guide. Thank you, Nance, for hanging out here and helping me through some of the factions that I don't really play.
Yep, you're welcome, man. Anytime.
Big suggestion to anybody just getting into the game. Pick some stuff that you know you want to play and that you'll stick with. This game can be very expensive. It's a lot of money to buy all of the DLC like we have. I don't regret doing it, I'll tell you right now, but I'm sinking as much time in as Nance does. You know, at 1,300 hours, you're not losing out, you know, $1 per hour type deal.
Yeah,
you know?
definitely not, yeah. If you're doing $1 an hour for value, if you can put 1,300 hours in this game, you've pretty much almost tripled your purchase.
Yeah.
At that point.
For those of you that's on a budget, pick a couple of factions that you think is pretty neat and run with them, see how they go. Only buy DLC that you absolutely want to play. I highly don't suggest buying the Horde DLC. You will regret buying the Horde DLC.
Yes. Do not buy Beastman or Chaos right now. Until Warhammer 3 comes out, we'll see how they update them at that point. Because Chaos is getting a huge revamp, and I'm hoping Beastman gets a huge revamp. There's one more DLC coming out for Warhammer 2, and I hope it's for the Beastman. They need to show them some love. They have literally not been updated since their DLC release in Warhammer 1.
And Norska too on that side. I'd like to see Wolfric in a better location.
I don't think he's going to be in a better location, but they need to fix their mechanics for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Anyway, thank you guys for watching. Hopefully this helps somebody out. Peace.